The following is a coaching story from my book, The Art of Persuasive Influence. I was coaching a team leader from one of my leadership programs who informed me that he was quitting the course because he was resigning from his job. The problem? His manager was micromanaging him and he was finding it intolerable. My initial question to him was, do you really want to leave the job? Because I needed to ascertain if he had the energy to pursue a solution, which he did. It was only the micromanagement that he was finding unbearable. So I discussed with him the approach that I suggest in many of these kinds of situations, where direct reports are raising potentially contentious issues with their upline management. Having covered the above and below the line model in training, I began by asking him how he thought his manager might respond to the suggestion that she was micromanaging him. He thought that she would quite likely get defensive, and when I asked him why, he thoughtfully considered the question and then responded that the term micromanagement was a derogatory comment on his boss's leadership. So we discussed the alternative language that was less inflammatory. The biggest question I wanted him to consider, though, was what he thought was causing the manager to manage him. He concluded that it was a lack of trust, so I suggested to him that the more he could take responsibility and ownership for the issue of lack of trust, the more likely he was to get a positive outcome. In other words, I suggested to him that he was the one that needed to change rather than his manager. He then went to see his manager and talked the problem through with her. He was careful to omit the word micromanagement from the conversation and set his tone to be neutral and non-judgmental. He suggested to his manager that because she was spending so much time watching over his work, that maybe she had an issue with lack of trust in his ability. She responded somewhat defensively to his suggestion as if it were a slight on her leadership, but he continued the conversation without an accusatory tone and instead said to her that he wondered if it wasn't so much her issue but rather his for being insufficiently trustworthy in some areas. He took full ownership for the issue of untrustworthiness and asked her in what ways she needed him to become more trustworthy. This tactic changed the manager's response to him entirely. They worked through the situation to a very positive outcome. He kept his job and enjoyed it a lot more, and she freed up her time as he became more trustworthy. It was a fantastic final outcome for someone that really didn't want to leave either their job or the course. In this case, it was certainly more effective to be involved in this one-on-one coaching because we had already covered off leadership models in the training program. It's always my preference to coach people who have some exposure to my leadership content via conference speaking or workshops or training programs. And it's also always my preference to work with the unable rather than the unwilling. Contact me to talk further about your leadership coaching requirements today.